Hi, friends. Happy to be back with our one more program, Learning from Experts, and we're just taking a little bit break of due to some annual meetings. And post that, we want to come something very important to you to have a lot of learnings. And today we have a special guest all the way from South Africa, and well-known person, and he was being masters in insurance industry more than 41 years as an MDRT member. So today we're going to invite him, and we're going to learn a lot of things about what is his journey, how far he can able to bring it success in your life. And I'm happy to reveal his book also. I got one of the copies, so you will talk about the book. It is Unleash Your Magic. So this is a wonderful book. I started reading it whenever time. You desperately want to become an MDRT member, or you desperately want to be a successful insurance advisor or in the sales profession. Definitely, this book will be wonderfully helpful for you. And none other than we're going to invite Mr. Logan Naidu, South Africa. Before I'm inviting him to our program, I just want to show his profile. Then we will invite him into our program. Now I'm showing his profile. Mr. Logan was the top of the table. 41 years he was with MDRT, and he was with the different committees work on his journey, and with a lot of learnings he was being given. I was being a MDRT speaker for several events, and he also was a divisional vice president for MDRT, and he also worked for MDRT Foundation. He was worked for Global Engagement Committee, and Logan was the commercial graduate, and as well as he was a certified financial professional CFP from Vedanta Academy in India and chartered at Insurance Institute in London also. Logan has been with different countries. He was a top speaker. You can able to see in his profile, and I'm just attaching the profile into after this meeting. You can go through his profile. He was being a master into speaking skills. One of his focus section, I remember that I gone through the video was 2014. I believe it is almost 2,100 members was attended his focus section on New Orleans, one of the biggest one. It was being communicated in 4 different languages. And he also spoken to different countries, and he was with into South Africa and President externally South Africa. He was very much famous into UAE, and he also trained a lot of top advisors in India in LIC. So Logan has written a few books, and he has become a author into the latest version of Unleash Your Magic. Is mainly about how help your power inside your how can you be able to grow yourself in your professional, and what are things you record on that. Actually, it's a wonderful book. We're going to learn about what are the importance he's mentioning in this book, as well as his life journey as MDRT members. Like you all, I'm waiting to meet him, and a lot of questions we're going to ask him about how can be a successful insurance advisor. I'm not taking much time into the profile. I'm just going to invite Mr. Logan into our program.
Thank you very much, Sakti, for those kind words. Appreciate it. And it's wonderful to be on your program. I've seen many of your other interviews.
Wow.
It's great to be here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And it was pressure to invite you learning from masters, because we were started with a year back with this concept of two programs. One is the pandemic heroes, with the persons who would extremely work on pandemic. Another one is that we want to bring it to the advisors who want to become MDRT, COT, TOTs, as well as the successful advisors. We want to bring in that what their kind of objection they have, what kind of their successful ratios has to be become a COT to TOT or MDRT to TOT. What is the So it has been. I'm very much happy to a lot of speakers who are coming and talking about their success stories and other things. And I connected with you. We have been in a spiritually a lot of spiritual events. You've been teaching to make me to mold myself as how to be an inner person and as well as outer person. That's going to you're going to share about that also here, and mainly on this book. So why it is so important to people has to read the book and all those things. So what motivated you to come to this profession, sir? How was your journey was started, sir?
Well, some of your listeners may not believe it, Sakti, but I'm in this industry now for 48 years, right? Way back in 1974, I joined an oil refinery basically at that time. It involved shift work, round the clock, and so I had a lot of spare time, especially when I worked the night shifts. So I was looking for something else. I had a lot of energy, was single, and so forth. And I had an aptitude for figures all my life. So I thought of what profession would be good. And at that time, that was the kind of principal reasoning. What would I be good at, as it were? So I walked into a life insurance company at that stage called African Eagle Life. They were in the center of Durban, and met the manager and told him I want to sell life insurance. And of course, that time, long before your time, the regulations were very limited, almost nothing. So, I was able to get a contract, actually a full-time contract, even though, part-time, I was wanting to do it. And I was given a rate book. They call it a rate book, Nowadays, the advisors may not understand what that is, but basically it's a book that gives you the rates of various ages, covers needed, etc., etc. And I was told, right, you're now an insurance agent. And that's kind of how I started, that's how my journey started, basically.
Wonderful, sir. And how was this? You're talking about the book. Will that be manageable those times? And I think there's a premium book, right? Early stages, we used to say that. We don't have computers and other things, just calculate the numbers with the premium.
Exactly.
How was the transmission from that to this time nowadays? How you feel?
Well, it was a slow transition, right, Sakti, because, as I carried on in the industry, you start to learn more. And much more recently, though, over the last, say, 20 some odd years, the regulations started coming in. And fortunately, I'd always been keen to further my studies in the industry. So, I did the equivalent of the CFP qualification way back in 1982. I was among the first batch, that wrote those examinations. And so in that sense, I kind of, all those studies that I did and then my BCom degree, etc., I met the criteria that was required, for the regulatory, situation. And I've seen a lot of regulations coming in, a lot of changes to the industry, a lot of changes to the way we operate. And it's become, really a profession now, where you need to really do a total financial planning and follow a proper methodology, etc., etc. So yes, I've seen lots of changes over time, basically.
Great, sir. Great, sir. And can you share about your family and why family is so important on your achievement, on your book?
Well, yeah, thanks, Sati. I think that's an important thing. In my view, and I think all your listeners will agree, the family provides the foundation, literally the foundation for our success. Right? I've been married to my wife Susie for 42 years, and we have 3 daughters. Right, all of them are graduated, from university, and all 3 actually studied Vedanta philosophy at the Vedanta Academy in India. So yeah, as I say, the family forms the center of your identification. It shouldn't be the boundary. In other words, it cannot only be about family. And part of MDRT also is that it teaches you to be more unselfish. So the circle of identification goes beyond family. But to answer the question, yes, it all starts with family. That's where you learn the key concepts of life, love and understanding and compassion and caring and giving. You have to give of yourself, really. So it starts with the family and then expands outside, as it were. So that's one of the key things that I think we need to do. And then secondly, one needs to be able to really, have an in-depth understanding of the financial planning process, right? It's important. You can't just go and do the business anyhow. It's got to be a structured financial process. And again, the regulatory environment takes care of that to ensure that we do that, basically. And you got to know your products inside out, so you got to know it 100%, all the technicalities and ramifications of the products that you're offering. And then I say you've got to care for people, Sakti, right? It's really important to genuinely care for people, have compassion, put yourself in their shoes, to see what would be the best advice that you can give. And then give of yourself, right? Give of your talents. As the great Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran says, you give but little when you give of your possessions. It's when you give of yourself that you truly give. And then finally, I'd say people must understand, or financial advisors particularly must understand, that this is a noble profession. Right? And as you will agree, we do what no other professional can do. So not only do we console people when they lose loved ones or their clients are disabled, but we facilitate the required funds to enable them to continue to live their lives in dignity, whether it's disability, dread disease, retirement, death, whatever it is. Right? We serve that purpose, which no other professional can have a claim to do, basically. And finally, we need to ensure that we are honest, we are advisors of integrity, and we have a work ethic.
True, sir, true. And now moving to very important questions to you, sir. How was your journey with MDRT? And did MDRT help you to grow in your profession? Why MDRT is important?
Okay, Sakti. I mean, my entire career, and I think my life really has revolved around MDRT. It's been an absolutely amazing journey. The very first time I came in, originally, as I said, I was working at Mobil Refinery, 6 years there, but in the first year I joined the insurance industry on a full-time contract, but of course doing it part-time. And my production was at sufficient levels, to meet the criteria required at that time, basically. So my very first goal when I came in full-time, that was in 1980, was to qualify for MDRT. Right? So the first year I could do the production was 1981. So I'd set that as my goal. I want to qualify for MDRT. I'd heard about MDRT from a few people that had been to annual meetings already. And I said, I really want to qualify. It's something that, I really need to qualify for. And it so happened that, I did what was required in 1981. And then I became a member in 1982 for the very first time. And I did that 6 years in a row. At that time, Sakti, you needed, if you were outside the United States, 6 consecutive years of production to become a life member. It's different now, it's 10 years. But at that time, 6 years in a row, you become a life member. So 1987, I became a life member. And that's when I decided to attend my first $1 Million Roundtable annual meeting. And that was in Chicago. And I'm not going to go into the details there, but that meeting had the greatest impact on my life up to that stage. Right? It was just mind-blowing. I described it as magic. In fact, that's where the title of my book comes from, Unleash Your Magic. The very first meeting I heard about the concept called visualization. And I've actually put that into practice in my own life, and I've seen the impact that it has. But from the early stages, again, as you mentioned in the introduction, I served on PGA, served on various committees, until ultimately, as divisional vice president of a pretty broad area of MDRT. And that has taught me, to be able to work with people. MDRT sets out one's path very clearly, right? So it guides especially new advisors and even experienced advisors as to how to progress in this profession. It helps advisors to get a greater balance in life, right? MDRT's whole person concept, we'll talk about that briefly just now. further. It taught me techniques and concepts to achieve success, and it will help any advisor to do that. It enables you to have friends all over the world, right? As you have, as I have, basically. And it provides, it's a cutting edge technology. Whatever's the latest technology, you can be guaranteed MDRT will bring it to its members. So yeah, there's so many benefits. I just name a few there, basically.
Sir, there 9 years to go to eat your half a century number, right? So how you are feeling on that, sir, actually, when you cross 25 years?
On which one? On what, Sakti?
25 years. When you cross 25 years of MDRT, how was that?
Oh, that was a long time ago, right? That was a quarter century club. I'm now 41 years, so yeah, that was a long time ago. It was an amazing achievement because, at that time, Sakti, I don't know if they still do it, I doubt really. They have a single event they used to have for people that were quarter century club, right? They used to provide a phenomenal luncheon and drinks and things like that. So yeah, it's an amazing achievement, but and more people are achieving that now, Sakti, right? More and more people. So my next goal is 50 years, 41 to 50, yeah, another 9 years.
9 years to go.
Can make that happen. So yeah, so look forward to that.
All the best, sir. All the best, sir. Yeah. And please share your views on certain areas which is in MDRTs, like old person concept, objection handling with clients, and mentoring.
All right, the whole person concept, Sakti. I have an entire chapter in my book. And sorry, Sakti, just to correct a slight misconception at the start, I haven't written many books. I've written the one book, but 3 editions. So the first edition was done in 2013, second edition 2014, third edition was done this year in 2022, and this incorporates my 6 years of sabbatical, you could call it, in India, where I studied spirituality, in depth, basically. So this is a third edition of the book. So the whole person concept is really about having a balance in one's life. Because what you'd find, Sakti, and I noticed that from the early days, and we had people talking to us from main platform as to what their attitude was when they came into this industry, just to make a lot of money, maximum money, work almost 24/7, 18, 19-hour days, and then they share with us what happened to them. They got, one particular guy, Wayne Cotton, got completely burnt out. He ended up in hospital, and when he ended up there, he realized, there's absolutely no way I can continue with this. And so he started to take it very easy, and he realized, I just didn't have any balance at all. So it's important to balance the different areas of one's life. And we talk about physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. And the beauty about this is that MDRT gives members the formula, to actually achieve this. And in the book also, I've got that exercise that MDRT compiled, where you answer a whole lot of questions and all the different important aspects of life, and you're able to see where you stand, how balanced is your life. So I urge, all members to do that balance exercise and establish where you are in your life so you can take the corrective measures. For instance, if you're not spending enough time with your family, right, you need to get that rectified. If you find that you spending too much time in your business, balance that. We're not saying don't work hard, but balance it really, right? And if you're not keeping fit physically, something is wrong. Your diet, one has to take care of one's diet, right? And then finally, to understand that there's something greater in life and take care of one's intellectual and spiritual development also. When it comes to objection handling, Sakti, my view has always been that you kind of nip it in the bud. What do I mean by that? I mean that right at the outset, you do a proper financial needs analysis, and the analysis is based on the answers that the client himself or herself gives you to the questions. So it's not something you're imposing on them, it's they giving you the answers. And it's an objective thing, so you're not manually working out what they need. It's done automatically, right, from a set program. And that tells them exactly what they need. So that being the case, yes, you might get some objections, but if they understand the process, which you ought to explain very clearly up front, so they understand that this is going to show the shortfall, and what you take is based on your affordability and current situation. And I found that the objections that I had were absolutely minimal, right? Minimal, because I planted the seeds up front, that you are going to establish what your shortfalls are, and I'll help to facilitate the process, and then we can, obviously you can decide what products you want to implement based on that needs analysis. Mentoring, I've unofficially mentored, I'd say, hundreds and hundreds of agents since I joined, starting off with my company. It was Southern Life at that time. We had just 6, MDRT members. I was the very first member, then I encouraged a few others to join. And, so it's an important concept, right? And now MDRT has formalized that. Right? So one can join, and I urge advisors to join the mentoring program and mentor the new aspirants that are coming in. All right? It's very rewarding, not only to the person that you're mentoring, but even the mentor also benefits enormously. I've seen that personally, how much I've benefited from mentoring, aspirants, basically. Sati, sorry, you're on silent then. You're on mute. Okay, sorry.
So it was like energy flowing when you were discussing on something.
Right.
So how do you become a speaker and author?
All right. Okay. That is a bit of a long story. I'll keep it short. I mentioned I attended the 1987 MDRT Annual Meeting in Chicago, and listened to some of the most fascinating speakers, that you could ever come across, really. And that quote I gave you on Khalil Gibran, I heard it for the first time there. Visualization, 2 chapters in my book, heard the concept there to start off. So, many things came from that meeting. It was just pure magic. So I was asked to give a feedback session, Sakti, to the Life Underwriters Association of South Africa. I was on the executive committee, right? I just felt it was important to serve on committees and help, our fellow advisors. And the chairman of the committee, at an executive committee meeting, wanted somebody from the executive committee, preferably, to give a feedback on that MDRT annual meeting in Chicago. And he looked around the table, and there was nobody else that attended the meeting except me. So automatically, I was the choice to become the speaker at this feedback session on that meeting. And anyway, so fortunately I make lots of notes. I really take a lot of notes, important points from speakers, and I had a whole lot of material. And the challenge for me was to cut it down to 45 minutes, which I did eventually, and did the presentation to 200 of the financial advisors, brokers, etc. in Durban, and ended up getting a standing ovation. And there was a scout for a national conference called the Multi-Rand Forum. It's the biggest national conference that was held in South Africa at that time. He had me speak, and then he approached me and said, "We want you to speak at the Multi-Rand Forum in 1989. And one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was invited to India, to speak there. I've spoken there extensively. And so that's how it all started. And over the years, whenever I did an MDRT feedback presentation, so whenever I went to a meeting, I needed to do a feedback presentation. It became an automatic thing, basically. So I had lots of material, right? Gathered over a decade, over a couple of decades, in fact. And then I thought, Sakti, all this material with some of the most powerful concepts and ideas that I picked up from MDRT, right, which I've shared, different periods with people. Why don't I put it all together in a book and then publish the book? which is what I did in 2013. So initially it was principally on all the feedback talks that I presented, but given in succinct form, so that members or even non-members particularly can benefit by reading this thing. So that was how I became an author. I just put some of the key concepts into this book, and it was released at that time.
Great, sir. And can you share examples or impact on your talk?
Yeah, all right. So I was in direct sales most of my life, but there came a period in 1994 where I was kind of, nominated, appointed to run a province in South Africa, one of 4 provinces at that time. So I became, let's say, called the provincial manager, or they called it zone manager at that time for this company, Southern Life. And since I was already very steeped in MDRT, right? Remember 1982 to 1994, so already member for 13 years plus. And I decided that I benefited so much from MDRT, I need to incorporate these concepts in my area of jurisdiction. So we had about 1,000 agents throughout the country. We had about 200 financial advisors in the province where I was, that I was in charge of. So what I did, I kind of every 2 weeks, I decided to have MDRT workshops, 2-hour workshops, invited all the financial advisors and even admin. I said, anybody that wants to attend is welcome to attend. I had lots of videos of MDRT, so I used to screen some of the videos and then do talk about MDRT and what it stands for, what the key benefits are, etc., etc. And I did a monthly newsletter where I gave people up-to-date production that they had and what have you. So we succeeded, Sakti, within a matter of less than 2 years in increasing MDRT membership from 6 members to 40 members out of 200, right? So if you do the sums, that's 20% basically of the members became MDRT. And in 1995, which was the next year, we took up the biggest delegation ever from that company to the MDRT Annual Meeting in Toronto, Canada. So that was one of it. Then, as I said, I mentioned earlier on, I was invited to speak in India, and 1996 in Bangalore, right? Life Insurance Roundtable Conference, and must have been at least 300 people, 300 advisors there. And I did a talk, and it was principally, in fact, virtually entirely on MDRT, benefits of MDRT, how you become a member, how you get invited to this phenomenal meeting in the United States, and just spoke at length on MDRT. And in the audience were many people, but particularly 2 people, and I mention these 2 people because their stories are in the book. One chap was R.K. Shetty, and the other was Lazarus Dyers. These guys, this was September, the talk was in September 1996. So, as you know, MDRT production is for the calendar year. So they had just about 3 months to go, and up to that stage, they must have had about at least say about 1/5 of the MDRT requirement. So a long way to go with just 3 months to go. But I think these guys, I spoke about visualization also, I spoke about the activity generator, the 20-point plan, and they kind of took in every single thing that I mentioned. And within 3 months, R.K. Shetty made MDRT and went on to make top of the table a number of years later. I used to visit him every year when I used to come to Mumbai. They invited me back in 1997 to speak there, and he became like Mr. MDRT in India, basically, right? He's got right up to the level of divisional vice president, and he's a force to be reckoned with in India. Lazarus Dyers, same story, didn't believe he could make it, but in the next 3 months achieved the balance, 80% that he needed, and made MDRT 6 consecutive years, opened a training school, right? Lazarus Dyers Education Academy. And he's currently still doing extensive training of financial advisors throughout India. So about 20, at least 20 that I'm aware of, members that came to that LIRT meeting in 1996 qualified for MDRT the following year. So to me, that kind of, shows that every one of us can have a huge impact in the lives of particularly new agents coming in. And one of the ways to transfer this knowledge, as it were, is through mentoring, right? Is to talking about the benefits of MDRT. So that's just some of it, Sakti, basically.
Thank you, sir. Coming to important question,
Right.
is what motivated you to write this book?
All right, that's I covered it briefly just now, but in a nutshell, Sakti, it was MDRT, right? The motivation, the impetus to do the book was entirely because of my association with MDRT. So, I mean, in the early stages, I'd actually got permission from MDRT to write as much as I could about the organization. And so it was this feedback sessions that I gave. Remember, I mentioned, all these feedback sessions on the annual meetings that I attended. And I realized that I had enough material that I could put into a book and then, help many members that would not have even been there, would not have obviously attended those kind of meetings. And some of the, most profound ideas and concepts, you'll find that, I thought the way to share it would be through a book. Through talks, I can reach just so many people, right? Especially in the early days, you didn't have Zoom and all these other facilities. So, I said, no, you can reach so many people, but if I do this book, I can reach so much of a wider audience. And, it's actually even translated into Korean. Right, a number of years ago, they wanted, the Korean MDRT EXCO members wanted to give every one of their members attending their annual conference or MDRT Day a copy of the book. So we came to an arrangement where they translated it into Korean, and 2,000 copies were sold to their members, or given to their members, basically. So yeah, that was the motivation. It was basically MDRT that got me to do that. And then, of course, the third edition, Sakti, is because I spent 6 years studying, philosophy, spirituality at this academy in India. I kind of decided to incorporate a lot of that in the book, basically, also.
Great, sir. So, what are the key aspects covered in the books? And
yeah, that's
financial advisors has to read it, and if they want to buy it, where can the listener can get the book?
All right. Okay. Thanks for that, Sakti. I mean, I'll just, I think time is limited, but I'll cover some of the key aspects. So members have an idea, or your listeners will have an idea. Number one, we say, the book itself captures the magic of the $1 Million Roundtable, right? It gives really succinct summaries of some of the most powerful presentations ever delivered from MDRT's main platform, right? Also, I mentioned the concept of visualization. There's 2 chapters on visualization. It's a concept that's been tried and tested, and I myself have successfully used it. I've used it even with sports, a sports team also, and virtually every peak performer today, from Olympic athletes to any other performers, actually use visualization to achieve the success that they, are able to achieve. And it's an invaluable tool, in my view, to take charge of one's own destiny. Then I say there's balance in life. I mentioned that exercise is in the book also, so you can actually work through and determine what your current situation is. How does one keep life in perspective, right? So I devote a big chunk of, one chapter to that. And then about thinking big, setting high goals, high ideals, right? Again, the secret of success, right? We give you the formula for success. And then I talk about, because sometimes, like you'll agree, we take life too seriously, right? So I've got an entire chapter on laughter and humor, right? How do you bring more laughter, humor, lightheartedness, keep the childlike attitude in your life? Right, so that's, and then I talk about self-management. Everybody wants to manage their life, but how do you manage your life? You've got to manage yourself first, right? So it starts off with that. So I've got an entire chapter on that. And then again, Sakti, sometimes we tend to forget what is our central purpose in life. Why are we born? Right? So entire chapters on unique purpose in life. And then, as I mentioned, with my studies at the academy, right, I've got, an entire chapter which I call Reflections on Life and Living. And then we give a few personal success stories of, as I said, R.K. Shetty and Lazarus Dice, and Cobus Klein's story, Cobus, his story is there also. And I conclude with my ancestry and my basically. And your second part was, where can listeners get this book?
Yeah.
It's available on all leading, digital and platforms and bookstores. But the easiest place for them to get it would be to go to my website. I've got links to all the major companies, including Barnes and Noble and other major companies around the world, like Waterstones, Blackwell's, Take-A-Lot, exclusive books. But my website, logannaidu.com, so www.logannaidu, LOGANNAIDU.com. All the links to all the different options are there, both digital and bookstores, basically.
After the interview, that our YouTube allow that links, so members can also.
Thank you, sir.
Easy to access in your website, and I buy the book for it. Actually.
Yes.
So, just putting a shorter while of this question, sir, what kind of books you recommend for people to public speaking skills or member can learn?
Well, number one, Sakti, I think, it's different things for different people, right, Sakti? Number one, each advisor has to establish really where do they stand in life and which areas do they want to improve. So that exercise I mentioned earlier, the old person concept that MDRT gives, will enable members to figure out where they need to improve. My own one I'll share with you was, I had hunger for personal development. And so if people want to improve themselves, which I would suspect every single individual wants to do, I would recommend non-fiction self-help books, right? There's a wide range of these books, but ultimately, Sakti, I'd say if we want to progress and achieve success in our lives, right, we need to first understand who we are, set higher goals, and then take the necessary steps to shape our destiny, right? Ultimately, we can get so much of knowledge from books and lecturers and talks and so forth. But in the final analysis, that journey to higher levels of growth has to start from within, right? We can talk a little bit more about that, but it has to go within, basically. But that's what I would recommend, self-help personal development books, basically.
So you've been with the insurance profession for so many years. This is an important question. Just want to ask you that actually about your spiritual journey, discussing a spiritual journey. Where you moved countries from South Africa to India, what is the source of peace or happiness?
Right. Okay. So that's a really fundamental question, Sakti, and why it is fundamental is that you're looking at the fact that every single individual, everyone, no matter what they say, whatever your goal is, if you keep asking, why do I want to achieve that goal? Why do I want to be a successful advisor? Why do I want to be top of the table? Why do I want to speak on main platform? Whatever it is. Why do I want the new car? Why do I want to get married? Whatever it is. When you keep asking why do I want to do that, it comes down and boils down finally to you want happiness and you want peace, right? This knowledge, right, that I've studied, which is available to all of humanity, and every major religion preaches the same thing, exactly. So it's not just one religion that tells you this, is that at the core of our being, the very source, our original nature, is pure happiness, pure bliss, pure peace. So it starts there, just to understand, right? To even get to that understanding is not easy. So if we understand that the very source, right, the very core of our nature is our true identity, and our true identity is perfect peace, perfect bliss, perfect happiness. So what you find though in real life experiences is that everyone is searching for success, searching for peace, searching for happiness in outside, external objects and beings. No doubt, Sakti, they give you happiness, but for a very short time. That happiness has what we call a shelf life. Lasts for a while, then it vanishes, and then you're looking for something new. Right? This search for happiness goes on endlessly and 99.999% in vain, because we're searching for this elusive peace and happiness outside. The only place it can be found is within. Right? So in other words, the direction of our search has to change from external to internal. Right? The great poet T.S. Eliot said, we must not cease from exploration. And the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we began and to know the place for the first time. So in the final analysis, I mean, you can keep searching. I mean, that's fine. You know, everybody has goals and so forth. But, you know, understand, just come to the understanding that if you want true peace, everlasting, eternal peace and happiness, you have to go within. It cannot be obtained outside. As the great German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said, it's difficult to find happiness within. Right? He says it's difficult to find it within, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else. Right? It's difficult to find happiness within, but it's impossible to find it anywhere else. So that's one of the reasons why I embarked on this journey, right? Not just to study at the academy in India, but to leave my country, to sell my house, sell my cars, come to India, enroll at the academy, do this 3-year residential course on Vedanta philosophy, which is a philosophy of life and living, right? The simplest way to explain it, it's like, you know, it's a manual for life. Every little gadget we buy, Sakti, comes with a manual as to how to operate it. The human being is the most complicated, evolved of all creatures, no manual. So Vedanta basically is the manual of life that, you know, talks about how you should navigate life and live life to the absolute full, basically. So that was the reason I moved countries, because, you know, I mean, India is the home of spirituality. Of that, Eastern, Western thinkers all agree. So I said, right, I want to be based in India. So I'm currently living in Pune, right? I'm in London at the moment for the last 6-7 weeks. My home is in Pune, actually. So that was it. So I wanted to study in depth, right, these great teachings that come from thousands of years ago in the Vedas and the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and so forth. And, you know, so that I could benefit personally, because this journey within doesn't just happen. One has to follow, a certain path to get to that stage, basically. So I said the best place would be here.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. I've been regularly attending your spiritual one, so it's a lot of intake one. I think must learn on that. And some of the most difficult, some of the people normally face the difficult times. So, what kind of difficulties you overcome in your profession of last 41 and above years?
All right, that's a very good question, Sakti. I can't think of any difficulties along the way, but, you know, I just want to give a little bit of my background so that some might see that as a difficulty, but I didn't really. I grew up relatively poor, right? I mean, 4 siblings. You know, I had 3 brothers and a sister, mom and dad. We lived in what we call a wood and iron house for many years, a couple of decades, in fact. And didn't have electricity, didn't have hot water, didn't have sewage, right? So I did my studies right up to the end of my high school under candlelight, right? It's only later on that we were able to move into our very own brick and tile house with electricity and all the other amenities, that one would take for granted nowadays, basically. So yeah, I'd say, the reason I mention that is that irrespective of what difficulties somebody has, where they come from, what their parents are, right, what their current situation is, no matter how bad it might be, is that they have it within their power to take themselves out of that situation and literally reach for the stars, right? They can achieve anything, and every individual can achieve anything they put their mind to, provided they believe they can achieve it and they do what is required, the necessary action. So yeah, so that would be the message there, basically.
Right. So we never give up on the whatever difficult times at best.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what would your outlook on current insurance markets at post-COVID? How you feel?
Yeah, just from what I've seen, Sakti, I think COVID has really got advisors to rethink how they operate. I know some have changed their entire operation to virtual, right? Well, many are kind of a hybrid, kind of a balance between virtual and actual appointments now that things are opening up, right? Inflation, as you would know, in many countries, 40-year highs. It's unthinkable to hear of UK and USA 8-9% basically. Turkey, for instance, has 78.6% inflation. So in the UK where I am currently, right, the Bank of England governor basically says that we're going to go into a recession, or the UK is going into a recession, and it will last till early 2024. And this could be the pattern throughout the world, really. So no doubt it will have an impact on the financial services industry. But I always get back to the point that the bottom line is that it's within our power to determine our level of success. I mean, you have people coming from the slums but becoming millionaires, right? People that are wealthy and not taking good care of the wealth suddenly go into the other extreme, really. So the point I make is that it's within our capability, irrespective of outside circumstances, irrespective of the economy, irrespective of any other external factor, as long as we can maintain that personal peace and happiness within, which entails the journey within, as I said earlier, you will not be affected. It's not that the economy won't change, recessions won't occur, stock market crashes won't occur. They will occur. It's how we deal with it, how we respond to it. And to be able to do that, one needs, the tools. You need to develop capacities within ourselves, like you've heard of the term intellect, instead of operating purely on emotions, we need to understand that there's an equipment that every human being has called the intellect, which is basically the capacity to think, to analyze, to make decisions, right? That faculty in most people is virtually dormant, so it needs to be developed. And, I talk about that also as to how we can develop the intellect, basically.
Great, sir. Before moving to our last question, I have this one for our new advisors. So can you recommend habits the new advisor has to follow to become successful advisors?
Well, I think number one, Sakti, I'm just going by what I've done, what I've realized, and instead of waiting, till after the lives are complete and then come to the realization. My advice to, all that are listening is to get up early in the morning, right? In other words, if you're sleeping very late, you're not going to get up in the morning. So it's been established beyond any shadow of a doubt that the most conducive time to study, to understand, higher values in life, to go within, right, is between 4 and 6 in the morning. That is the best time. Very difficult for most people, right? there's a saying in the Gita which says, what is like poison in the beginning, in chapter 18, is like nectar in the end, and what is like nectar in the beginning is like poison in the end. For instance, getting up at 4 in the morning, it's like poison, right? I mean, to most people, right? I get up at 4 every morning, since many years ago. Get up at 4, and the first thing I do, at least for 1 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes, is to study these higher values of life, right? So engage in personal study, by myself, and so that's the start to my morning. And when you do that, so for those that cannot get up at 4, we say 5 o'clock is fine. You cannot get up at 5:30 is fine, right? If you cannot get up within 6 o'clock, by 6 o'clock, because that's the most conducive time, I'd say try and get up as early as possible. And the only way you're going to do that is if you get to bed early. So it just means a change of habits. And I can guarantee that will change people's lives. If you, in the first part of the morning, study the higher values of life, spend quiet time by yourself, you will see enormous benefits. I mean, gigantic benefits, basically. So that's it. And as I said right at the outset, always look after the best interests of your client, right? Start from day one, basically. Exercise, right? Then, that's an important part of life, right? How do you keep yourself fit? For you to do what you do, for us to do what we do, we've got to keep ourselves fit. So I've gotten to the habit of exercising 7 days a week, right? I just feel it's critical to maintain, sharpness of mind, of intellect, and to keep your body firm and healthy. So that's important. Develop yourself intellectually, right? Read stimulating books, that can get you to think, and not just read them, but try and put some of the concepts into practice. And finally, I would say, as I mentioned that early hours of the morning, but spend more time on just understanding who we are. All right, start this journey. As I tell people, spirituality is not a journey in time and space, but it's a journey from ignorance to knowledge, right? Knowledge of oneself. So try to acquire more knowledge of oneself. We think we know a lot about ourselves, but once you get into this higher study that we talk about, you realize we know almost nothing about ourselves. So engage in this journey of going within, understanding who we are, and then getting this kind of elusive peace and happiness that we are all searching for. And when you do that, you suddenly find that you are an inspiration to other human beings, all around, basically.
Great, sir. Almost we're coming to the final question now before closing it up. What was your goal of the year? What was your future plan?
Well, my future plan, Sakti, I mean, really, is number one, I want to, try to get this book into the hands of as many people as possible, because I genuinely feel that the material that, I've covered here will absolutely benefit, without a doubt. It will benefit everyone that reads it, right, in one or more aspects of their lives. And more importantly, though, my journey of, personal development continues, right? It's an ongoing thing. It's not something that can even be achieved in a few years, because ultimately, the only time this journey stops is when one achieves enlightenment. So I've still got a long way to go, and so that journey to enlightenment still continues. So a lot of my efforts will be devoted to further developing myself, really.
Great. Wonderful, sir. It's been an hour learning and listening from you. I think members who are watching this one, it will be a power-packed impact. You were shared all your last 41 years experience, and you have so much of efforts you put it for your career. Most of the trustworthy you build it for your clients, and I think this is the biggest learning what we to do it from this. And I strongly believe I started reading this book. I think all the members will buy this one, and they started reading this books. It will be very much useful for that, and we will be putting the links in our YouTube page. So when you can able to click the page, automatically redirect to Mr. Logan's website. You can able to buy it through whichever country you are. And this is something what we want to give back to the society. See, like Logan's rightly mentioning that learning is very, very important. And you can become a speaker, you can become an author, and give back to society. That is what I learned from you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful taking an interview with you, and I hope all the members will have a benefit out of your interview. Looking forward to see your next book soon. We will be launching in our website and our YouTube page. Get connected with more members, know about that, sir.
Thank you very much, Sakti.
Thank
Much
you so much,
appreciated.
sir. Wonderful being part of this program, and thank you, friends. We will be seeing you next learning from experts soon. Till that, signing off, your Shakti. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.